I'd like to start also by just thanking Andrew Sharpless and Jackie Savitz of Oceana, as I believe they framed the issues for World Ocean Day so brilliantly. And also just again to applaud the efforts of Jordana and Marcelo and their incredible team to bring together this community to re-examine our relationship with nature, the planet's resources, and our relationship with each other. And I also want to acknowledge that we are living in extraordinary times with COVID-19, the pandemic, and also the movement, which we've all seen, just to rise up and re-examine and fight for a more just world. And as innovators, entrepreneurs, conservationists, activist artists, and ecological designers, we understand the connection between racism and environmental and social injustice by the air, the water, and other toxins disproportionately found in lower income and Black neighborhoods. And I believe that part of our work is to understand and be part of this collective movement for justice. And for that reason, I am thrilled to have these panelists with us this morning to speak about innovation and plastic pollution reduction. So the format for this panel is such that I'll start by asking each panelist a specific question and then move to sort of shorter, snappier Q&A with the panelists, and then we'll have time for audience participation towards the end of our time together. So please write your questions into the chat and I will field them as they come in. So I'd like to start with Oskar. And again, it is great to be in conversation with you again at Fashinnovation. Oskar, you are trained as a medical doctor. You're a Goodwill ambassador for culture of peace and sustainability and deeply engaged in art and design. And I believe you have this outstanding skill set of being an artistic physician, or shall I say a medically trained artist and designer. It's really, really unusual. And I would love you to speak about the steps you have taken with innovation and turning the tide of plastic pollution in your own life with art and design, and also with the ASAP, the as sustainable as possible, as soon as possible, including your 22 years of sustainable concepts, practices, and innovation at Osklen and Instituto E.
Okay, well, thank you, Susan. It's lovely to talk again, huh? And most this is a way that we can share with the others in the audience. Our conference is very interesting. All of us were the guest ones. Sometimes I think that, as I said, I studied as a physician. I did work as a physician for a long time, being a designer, an artist, an activist, things like that. Sometimes I say, come on, I'm nothing, I'm nothing. But it's not a presumptuous way. I didn't want to be everything. But what I can say, I can understand that I think it helped me to have a more holistic point of view of what environment is and means, because it's about us as human beings. It's about us. It's about our relationship with the environment and our relationship with ourselves and with the others, with the society. So it's about the health of the human being, health of us as individuals, in balance with the health of the planet. So what's great being an artist, because you have a sensibility to understand, to feel yourself and around the zeitgeist of the moment. Then you become an activist, because as an artist or as a physician also, you are more close to the human spirit. And so you can really feel more and the needs of be part of some kind of activism to change what we have now. And it's a pleasure to be a designer, because as a designer, you can really transform into a perspective, not as an artist. You can really change things. You can work as an activist, not only bring the spirit of the activism or the sensibility for the human being around the environment as an artist, but a designer, you can transform. You can transform. So how I came, when I bring the ASAP, as sustainable as possible, as soon as possible. This concept, this was before bringing this sentence, bringing this concept, I could feel that when I began doing 22 years ago already, it's doing sustainability. It was the desire of transforming. This is great, this is great. The sensibility, the vision that the world would change for that, the needs for changing for sustainability. And I became doing the practice. Why ASAP? Because we society, we as individuals, and now us as institutions, we are arguing and we are protesting that we want 100% sustainable. Companies, persons, institutions, etc. But we have to understand that our generation, we are living this transition for this new model of economics, of way of living. We are living a huge transformation. We are living a transition moment. We are coming from 200 years of industrialization that did bring us to that. Did bring to us better quality of life. We are living the double that we used to live. We are sharing food much more than a century ago. So, but on the same way, the large scale of industrialization did bring us to this chaos that we're living now. So I'm very optimistic because I really think that our generation, the mindset of the global society has changed. That's why we are here all together and talking about that now. So because I could see an example with me at Osklen, at Instituto, and I could see many during those last decades, some great initiatives from institutions, like companies, like individuals, like academics in universities, etc., trying to be 100% in one subject in a product or service. And it was difficult to have, because it's very difficult to have something in the whole chain to be 100% sustainable. I could see so many projects being failure because people became disappointed because they didn't reach 100%. Many times. And I could see, come on, but it's great. You have, for example, 10% of what you're doing here, it's a wonderful project. You're helping at least part of the chain. So keep doing. Maybe next year you're going to be 22%. Next year, 24%. You know, it's moving forward and not paying attention for institutions and society arguing, you know, and asking and protesting you that you're not being 100%. If it happens, it will never happen because it's very difficult. Everybody, all of us here, we know how difficult it is. So this is, I think, many other institutions and certifications and things like that, they are excludent. They exclude, us society, we exclude new small projects. When you think about as sustainable as possible, as soon as possible, if you have it in mind, we are including everybody, even anyone who is doing just 1% on sustainability. If, of course, is in a direction for 100%. So that's the, you know, that's the way I love it to share with the others, because I know we can include more people, more institutions, more companies into that.
So I just want to say that's fantastic. I love the positivity. I think, you know, there's a saying, perfection is the enemy of the good. And I think that we all have to be able to work and use the ASAP as sustainable as possible, as soon as possible, or looking through the lens of the UN sustainability goals as a way to really, you know, look at the whole supply chain and do what we can to move toward a sustainable society and sustainable products. And I also want to say I truly believe, as an artist and filmmaker, I'm now spending a lot of time painting, which has been fabulous, that, you know, artists and designers have the ability to really shape thought. And when I think about the sort of definition of design as the practice of forethought, it's like thinking and taking the time to observe. We can create different design processes and innovations. And I really thank you, Oskar, for your thought-provoking and inspired responses. And now I'd like to transition to Dianna, who is a beacon for single-use plastic-free life and has inspired me on this path when we met over a decade ago. So I'm really thrilled, Dianna, to have you with us here today. And Dianna co-founded the Plastic Pollution Coalition, which is working, I think, as probably everybody who's listening in knows, to help end the cycle of single-use plastics use, and was inspired to co-found PPC by her work as an artist. And her work is really beautiful if people haven't seen it. Dianna's worked with plastic bags as her primary material for the past 20 years, where she was alerted to the fact that non-degradable plastic never leaves our ecosystem, and wanted to activate coalitions to cut the amount of single-use plastic we use and throw away. And Dianna, you've done a stellar job. You've galvanized thousands, and I'm honored to say that I consider you my friend and also my mentor in working toward a single-use plastic-free life. So as an activist and on the forefront of plastic pollution awareness and advocacy, I would love you to speak about where we've been, where we need to go with regard to plastic pollution and the reduction of single-use plastics, and also to put it into the context of environmental justice and the movement of protecting the poor and most vulnerable who are most adversely affected by plastic pollution. We all are, but just in that context of the zeitgeist of what's happening today.
Yeah, well, good morning. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Susan, and really wonderful to meet you, Oskar and Giulio.
It's okay, don't worry. I
my
like
sister,
Giulio.
my sister's Julia. So yes, I mean, it's such an interesting moment in time to have this time period and the privilege and the space to be able to contemplate what is happening around us, but with regards to, in particular, this issue, because this is the lens that I look at the world through. Plastic and plastic pollution. Plastic is not something that if you had spoken to me more than 15 years ago or so, I would have understood to the level that I currently understand it. And I'm looking to learn more, obviously, every day. But what's come to my attention just in the course of my life, as a person who loves the ocean and the sea and a certified diver, an eternally aspiring longboarder, a surfer, and a swimmer, is that, you know, I continued in my life to see more and more plastic washing up around me in different parts of the world, here on the Pacific Ocean in Southern California, where I live. And I didn't really make a connection because I've been working with the material for my artwork for actually almost 30 years now. That said, in working with the material, working with plastic and plastic bags to make my artwork, I was really celebrating the material and the colors and the text and the images that were printed on it, and not making that connection between what I was seeing washed up and the material that I was working with in my studio. Cut to, this has been a long journey so far, and what I've come to understand, but really just to understand the most in the last 3 years, is that plastic and our use of plastic, particularly when we design packaging for our food and beverage and beauty products with it, but when we design with it with a sense of intended obsolescence, we're designing with it to use it to package or hold or be something that we intend to use for a very short amount of time. When we use this material in that way, which it's primarily made from oil. I'm just going to say that because I'm not sure if everybody tuning in to our panel understands that plastic is primarily made from oil and fossil fuels. It's made from this rare material that we extract from under the surface of the earth. You know, this material and the way that we use it, and when we design for single use, we unfortunately are polluting ourselves. And it is a material that potentially can be, it's toxic from extraction, through manufacturing and production, through our use, and then instantly it's a waste management issue. And really when we see it there, oftentimes the way that it's managed is to be burned or incinerated, or other more euphemistic terms like pyrolysis or chemical recycling. And along the entire path, it impacts everyone's health, but in particular impacts communities of color, lower income communities, fence line, frontline communities, because oftentimes those communities are located within a proximity of the facilities that manufacture and process this material. And I don't want people to think, because we grew up with this idea and we were taught that when you use something, then it goes away from you. The materials go away, we throw it away. And we were really brought up and raised with this idea of recycling. But we're now coming to learn that recycling is somewhat of a broken system and really needs to be rebooted. And these other systems that we grew up with, I just turned 55. So when I was a kid growing up here in Hollywood, California, the milk was delivered in glass bottles. And the milkman would pick them up and bring us sterilized new bottles that had little paper foil tops on them. And we would use that again. So it was a circular system. It was a localized system. And it was based on reuse and refill. And when you see a system like that, but then you realize that when you go into a lower income community, if I drive just a couple miles south of where I live, people don't have a choice. When you go into a lower income community, they don't have a choice. You can't say, oh, do you have that in glass? I'd prefer to buy it in glass. You can't ask for something in another material. Oftentimes your only choices, or if you live on an island, or if you live in a more remote area, you know, on an island, almost everything's imported onto that island. And I was having a conversation with one of my coalition members yesterday, and she lives on an island in the Bahamas, and they don't have a lot of choice. So not to be Debbie Downer, I mean, I know that, you know, Jackie Savitz and Andrew Sharpless have really laid out this issue for us so that we can understand. But speaking to you as an artist and a person who gives a damn, I think that it is tantamount important for us as artists and designers and people who are able to think outside the box and imagine the world that we want to see. It is really an important moment for us all to step up and do our part. And to young people, I would say it's the wild, wild west. And to entrepreneurs, I mean, this is an incredible time for us to help pursue alternatives and alternate systems and materials and infrastructures, and to help lift and scale those up. So I can talk to it more, but you know, that's how I'm looking at all of this right now, Susan.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I have to say that I too was raised with the milkman and the glass bottles, and the transformation to the efficiency single-use economy is just striking. And I also want to say that you know, with regard to recycling, just a fraction of plastics is recycled, and Jackie Savitz talked about that. And we cannot recycle our way out of this mess. We have got to have reduction of plastic products, single-use plastic products. So I do believe that artists can help imagine, and designers and entrepreneurs, and look to imagine and reimagine these processes, because we're basically polluting ourselves and our oceans, and it's just it's a complete mess. So I want to thank you for that. And also, I think it's a great segue to now introduce Giulio, because he actually has, as a businessman, been incredibly innovative in tackling some of the plastic pollution issues. I was really honored to profile Giulio in my Musings magazine on responsible innovation. And I just want to give like a quick history, just that your family company, Aquafil, was founded in 1965 and is a leader in the production of synthetic fibers with innovative and sustainable production models. And you have 16 plants around the world, and you've been a pioneer in the circular economy for textiles. And what Aquafil did was, with your innovation and courage, create EcoNil, which is a regenerated nylon that's produced by 100% from waste like fishing nets, old carpets and textile scraps, and plastic components from landfill and oceans, and is used to make new carpets and textiles. And now EcoNil is used by more than 1,000 brands, including Adidas, Gucci, Stella McCartney, to reduce emissions and waste. And what I'd like you to do is talk a little bit about these new products and collaborations, and how you as a member of a family business innovated to reset and reimagine better productions, processes, and products, and how you're working with the fish farming industry and the divers of the Healthy Seas Initiative to rid some of the plastic pollution in our oceans.
Thank you, Susan. I want you to try to imagine the situation when about 12 years ago, I started to speak about landfills as gold mines. So as really suppliers of raw materials. And well, the result was my father, who didn't even dare to ask what the hell I was going to do. And colleagues and management that also are my best friends who with big eyes, they started to ask me, Giulio, are you sure? Many industry giants tried before and they failed miserably, burning millions and millions of dollars. And last but not least, bankers. It was 2008, and I was looking for financing this journey. And I was trying to explain this to bankers, and the result was that they were simply running away, and in this case, saying openly that I was crazy. But luckily, I didn't understand or I didn't follow their recommendations, and having very good customers, and among customers, also mentors who really helped me to understand that all what we were doing and what we are doing is wrong, as Dianna and Oskar are saying, that we have to change. I started my journey, and my journey is to take waste, as you said, just like fishing nets or carpets or others, and to transform them into products. And this because nylon, and especially nylon 6, has this incredible possibility to return to its original building blocks. And when I started to look for waste and to be hungry for waste, I realized that there were plenty of fishing nets that were made out of nylon. And so I started to collect fishing nets from all over the world, because fishing nets are everywhere. We eat a lot of food. We farm a lot of fish, and we use a lot of fishing nets. United Nations say that 10% of plastic gears are coming from fishing nets. And I started, first of all, to contact aquaculture people. In Norway, for example, there is the biggest industry of salmon farming. And I started to collect their fishing nets, but then also going everywhere in the world to collect the fishing nets and to take them back. Discovering that they are not made only by nylon 6, but also by many of other very nasty materials, very also unhealthy stuff that are coating the nets to prevent the growth of fungi, bacteria, algae, and stuff like that. And then, after inventing the system of regenerating nets, so to return to the raw material and to give the possibility to designers to design, as I like to say, with the end in mind. So not only with the idea of making waste, but on the contrary, at the end of the use of a product, to create again raw material for the next circle of life, I realized that simply to speak about the problems of the world and of the oceans without discussing about actual and viable solutions leads to paralysis and not to progress. And this is why we decided that together with a Dutch partner making socks and a Dutch NGO made or coming from professional divers, we said, why don't we try to rescue fishing gears that are abandoned in the sea, to collect them in order to create awareness. Clearly, if I recycle a lot of fishing nets and waste, to give you an idea, this year we will recycle more than 40,000 tons. It is not possible that professional divers collect 40,000 tons of fishing nets out of the oceans, but they can create awareness about the size of the problem, which is immense, it's enormous, and they can help me to say, hey, we have a solution, because if tomorrow morning we use nylon to make fishing gears instead of other materials that are apparently cheaper, but on the contrary, at the end are more expensive if we consider also the effect on the planet, we can take them back and we can even pay for this waste so that instead of creating a problem for the oceans, we can have a raw material that is returning and give the possibility to create, I don't know, a carpet or a pair of beautiful sunglasses or whatever you like if you need nylon. So this is very shortly a story and how it is working now. And there are beautiful examples of products coming from the most important fashion companies in sportwear as well as in luxury, like Stella, like Gucci, Prada, Burberry, and many, many others.
Well, thank you so much, Giulio. And I think that what's so important is that we need people on all different levels. We obviously need to prevent the plastic from going into the oceans in the first place, but we also have to find ways to clean up what's there. And your work is really a testament to innovation. And I think I've got a question from Dianna.
Susan, no, I just wanted to add, I really appreciated the first thing that you said when you began, which is that this is a material, a valuable material. I think it's one of the shifts that we need to help facilitate as artists and designers and art design doctors is we need to figure out how to get people to understand that these are all valuable resources and valuable materials. And once we're able to make that shift, nature doesn't create any waste. Something has evolved to use everything if we look at biomimicry. So, you know, we need to emulate that and stop referring to things as waste. Again, there is no way, there's nowhere for anything to go. So if we can make that basic shift in the way that we look at materials, I think that it's going to help to support quite a bit of change, you know, quite a lot of the change that we need.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that the role of designers and also enlightened manufacturers can really look at circularity and a no-waste system. And I don't know, Giulio, if you want to say something about how you use the biomimicry to come up with you know, the tiles for your carpets, and that there's so many great examples of how we can look to nature for solutions.
Well, again, luckily, I have had the fortune to meet very important people who talk to me many incredible things. And one of them is Janine Benyus. And Janine Benyus, with her team, she is, I believe, at the top level of biomimicry. And she has inspired many companies and designers, and among them I like to mention David Oki, who is also one of my very good friend, and he's working for my best customer Interface, and they make beautiful modular carpet tiles that are inspired by biomimicry, so that they make much less waste, almost zero, when they make their carpet tiles, and they make the tiles in a way that they are multi-directional. So you don't need to put them in one direction, but you can put them in any direction you like, so that like happens in nature. I mean, if you go into a forest, forest is an explosion of creativity, you know, and the same is the design of that kind of carpet. And then, of course, what does nature do? At the end, there is no waste, as Dianna was exactly saying. You know, everything is becoming nutrient for the next circle of life. And we must stop speaking about waste, speaking about end of life. It's time to speak about end of use, because if we understand that at the end of use, there is possibility to create value, and this is very easy in our case because of the molecule. So we invented a way to recycle this molecule, but at the end, it's the molecule itself that has this possibility. You have really possibility to create products that never end, and that don't require to bring or to take raw material twice or three times from the planet, but just once.
So I'd like to, that's wonderful. And I would love Oskar to weigh in on, there was something I read about there was an article about sort of your philosophy and talking about sustainability as a new mindset, but that much of the onus of responsibility should not be placed just on the consumers. It's always like the consumer has to make the choice, and as much as our choices matter, I really believe they do. You talked about the role of corporations and sort of that interplay of corporations and government and consumer activism. And I just love your thoughts on how we can move toward this more sustainable world that's more in balance with the health of ourselves and the planet.
Oh, thank you, Susan. But I'd like to just talk about plastic. Now, we have to, it's great what we can see, how we have moved, because if you remember, in the 60s, the plastic was the material for the future.
Yeah.
Because it has scale, it was affordable for anyone. It was very moldable for any designer, any artist, any company to develop new forms, new utility items, things like that. It was the plastic. It was even compared with, with the moon search on the spatial era. The plastic was a very exciting material for designers and artists and companies. We were democratizing some part of some fabrics, tissues for society. So we have to remember that.
Yeah.
So as we can see, it wasn't so much long away. Recyclable plastic like PET or nylon, we began doing that 25 years ago. Things like that. We know that we have to change the molecule. And we are now, we four are talking about biomimicry, biotechnology. Of course, it is the future. It's again a new search for designers, new designers thinking how to develop this new material and how to use and how to have involved with nature and bringing recycling of rejuvenating and recycling as nature does anytime, as Giulio were talking about. So I just can say that I'm very optimistic, of course, because us as individuals, us as thinkers, us as designers, artists, us as businessmen, industries, we are all on the same point of. So I really think, just to explain to you, Susan, what you said, I really think, I began some months ago thinking about that. We used to always point companies, industry, institutions, us as individuals, to say, oh, you have to change your manners, the way you produce your product or service, etc., etc. What I could see on the last months, understand, is that companies, industries have changed much more than us as individuals in the society. We talk a lot, we do manifests, we protest, we write in Instagrams, but we didn't change as much as some companies are doing. It's the right time for us to think about, we have to do, as individuals, a huge reflection how much we have changed. Because technologies, new thinkings, products and services that are sustainable, we have already some very, not few, but a few ones that we could change our lifestyle into a new era of sustainability, of economics, of way of living. But we are changing a little bit. We are just protesting. So I really think what we need now, it's education. It's education. People has to understand, because Susan, I think we have talked about that. What I think, for an individual today to do a choice for a sustainable product or service, that most of the time they are more expensive than the other ones that have a huge scale for the industry. We have, please, we have to understand the chain, the production chain, to understand where it's sustainable and why, scientifically or in the love of, to understand how it helps a small community, poor community in some place in Africa, for example, or don't pollute a kind of river, or don't deforest, things like that. So to understand that, we have to be a little bit more intellectualized to understand why this sustainable product that's similar to this one, that's made in a non-sustainable way, that's cheaper because it has a huge scale for a long time, versus this new one that is exactly for the customer as the same. The difference is on behind the production chain that is sustainable. So for you to have the choice to pay more for this piece that's sustainable, you have to be intellectually to understand. You have to be a noble spirit, because you don't have any advantage versus this other one. You don't have any advantage with the sustainable versus a non-sustainable one. As individual, we don't have anyone. So we are being noble to choose this one. Second, we have to have money. We have to have conditions to pay. So we are still in the very high point of those society, the opinion leaders. So we have to share. That's why I like it. 15 years ago, when we developed the concept of the new luxury. Yeah. It's the opposite of this snob luxury. It's the nob luxury, because it comes from human noble values. Yeah. So we have to understand this is the new chic, this is the new cool, this is the new luxury, this is the new now revolution. We have to stop doing revolutions like we used to do in the 60s. We have another enemy in this way, and the other way, I would say not enemy. We have to change inside ourselves. Well, sorry for my excited and enthusiastic.
No, I think that's great. What I wanted to say is that I think you need the education that is crucial, but you know what we're witnessing today is that you need the activism and you need the policy changes. We just got a question that is actually addressed to all of you, and I'd love you just to respond. And Oskar, you sort of have in terms of the new luxury, but what are the impacts of fashion as a form of activism on society? And I would say do it within the context of plastic pollution. Dianna.
Yeah, I'm just happy to say I think that, you know, fashion holds a place in our world where it influences a lot of people, and as thought leaders are able to influence people, it's rarefied, but it's really a place where we can create change. And it's also a place where we've seen many times with different movements, people addressing the anti-fur movement and or veganism, different movements. We've seen them kind of explode through fashion. So I think that fashion is a perfect vehicle to help not only educate people, but raise awareness and to help provide and suggest existing materials, natural materials, and reused materials, preferably non-toxic reused materials, for humanity to utilize. But again, what Oskar was just talking about is so important because, you know, it's always been chic to go back to traditional indigenous arts, designs, materials, and it's an unfortunate kind of byproduct that's really been marketed to communities and countries around the world, this idea of advances and technology having a relationship to plastic, the miracle material. That's really unfortunate because, you know, just one example, in India, where there's such a long, you know, tradition of using unfired clay cups to drink chai with, in many places, unfortunately, that's been replaced. The clay cups, which were unfired, you drink out of them, they taste slightly like the earth. It's a beautiful experience. And then you could literally drop them to the ground beneath your feet and look down in Mumbai and see that it was just rejoining the red earth beneath your feet. When that is replaced with plastic cups or plastic bags, and traditionally people are used to just dropping something, you don't have the same result because this is a material that is going to last longer than a human lifetime. And I equate that with the concept of something lasting forever. So that's an unfortunate thing, but we have all of these beautiful traditional and indigenous, or even just going back to the milkman model, you know, around us that we can tap into, and companies doing that and doing very innovative things with materials. So I just think this is the most exciting time. It's a challenging moment in time, but it's a great moment to be here and to look at how we can address these issues and how we can really use fashion and design to help shape and guide us out of that.
Giulio, do you want to make a comment?
Yes, we must not forget that fashion and textile are one of the most polluting industry today in the world. As Ellen MacArthur Foundation is saying, today it accounts between 2 to 3% of the CO2 emissions in this world. And if nothing changes, in few years, this 2 to 3% will become 26%. At this point, will be the most polluting industry in the world. So we must change. And we must change because if we don't change, the legislation will impact this industry so strongly that many people risk to disappear, first of all. Second of all, we must change because, as Oskar and Dianna are saying, fashion industry is one of the most influencing industry today in the world. So it is very good. I love when NGOs, they push fashion designers to go for sustainability, because they are not only influencing fashion industry to change, but they're influencing also our people, the inhabitants of this world, to change. We need education, as Oskar is saying, because without education, we will go to nothing, you know, it is absolutely important. So in order to change, you need a very, very great collaboration throughout the value chain. So you really need to work openly, understanding what is good and what is bad, depending on the application. So doesn't exist, for example, one single fiber that can substitute all. Would be very easy, but this doesn't exist. Sometimes natural fibers are better, sometimes synthetic fibers are better, depending on what you need and what you are going to do. And as Dianna is saying, we must also address and target healthy or healthiness of the material that we are using. Because, for example, dye stuff that are used both with natural fiber and synthetic fibers are always, or most of the time, cancerogenic, mutagenic, toxic. So we need to address and to raise awareness about this problem and understand how to resolve this problem. We need to do it. It's as simple as that.
So we have about 2 minutes left. So I'd like to just make a few sort of conclude with some takeaways. Like one, the importance of education, environmental literacy, obviously design literacy and circularity, that we have this enormous opportunity to use the maker's mindset, designers, creativity, use our imagination to look to what works in nature. I know that Fashinnovation and Oceana are partners in putting this event on with many other supporters, and I'm hoping that many of you will go to Oceana and sign up to become a wave maker. It's really important that we all can work together, and I really applaud the efforts of Jordana and her team, because this is the way that in community, in collaboration, we can work together for some solutions. And I just quickly would like to ask one question. Where do you go for inspiration and or hope? Just quickly, a word, 2 words to end the panel. Dianna.
I often go to film and art and books, and I'm very inspired right now by a new film that's out, that's playing all around the world, and you can watch it online. It's called The Story of Plastic. Mm-hmm. It's heavy. It will help you understand the whole production chain and the impact to our air, our water, our lives and the planet. But at the same time, it's full of beautiful models of zero waste cities and refillable reuse systems. And I really think that's the way of the future. So that's where I take my inspiration, and I take it from nature.
Excellent. Oskar.
Gaia, the mother Gaia. I'm reading again back the Gaia by James Lovelock. He wrote in 1979, we are just one planet, one organism. We need to balance us humans, between us and the whole nature. We are living exactly an example of an unbalanced, and this is the future. This is the new balance. Yes, this is balance. Gaia.
And Giulio, about 1-2 seconds, because we're about to be cut off.
Well, 2 pillars. When I read a lot of books. 2 pillars are cradle to cradle, technically, of Bill McDonough and Michael Braungart, which is really created the theory of circularity, and then biomimicry of Janine Benyus. And last but not least, young generations. This is what is inspiring me. When I see them and when I have the possibility to spend time with young people, for me, it's a breath of oxygen.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you all. I am inspired by all of you, us working together. Jordana, happy World Oceans Day to everybody. Every day is World Oceans Day, and it's just really an honor to be with all of you.